Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year. This is December 31st, 2020. And as we enter into the new year, 2021, I'd like to just leave you a little message briefly. The message is this: crises reveal what's in your heart. It's been a real year of crisis, hasn't it? And I think in the minds of many, instead of singing bye bye 2020, they're going to say good riddance of 2020. It has been a year of crisis. But crises reveal what's really in my heart. And if deep in my heart it is goodness that's about to sprout, and the challenges of the time bring out the great and goodness in me, as it's happened with so many essential workers this year, it's beautiful to see. But also if my heart has got rot in it, it will show that fruit as well. In John's Gospel here in the Bible, chapter 15, it says, Jesus says, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He takes every branch in me that does not bear fruit, and everyone that does bear fruit, he prunes. He cuts off all that do not bear fruit, and those that do bear fruit, he prunes, that you may bear even more fruit." You might say from that chapter 15 in John's Gospel that what we've been through this year has been a kind of a pruning. The crises reveals what's really in my heart. If you think back to 2019, 18, 2017, the pace of life, certainly in Montreal, has been absolutely absurd. People were burning out at record rates. People were exhausted, tired out. I remember once mother was driving through my church parking lot at amazing speed, and I had to block her and say, "Look, lady," stop her and say, "Look, you're going crazy here. You're going way too fast. You're going to hurt somebody." And instead of her getting angry at me, she just began to cry and cry. And she says, "I can't take it anymore. I think I'm going to break down. I'm behind. I'm always late. I got things to go to. I can't take care of my kids anymore. I'm going to crack." And I just said to her, "Look, just have a good day, but please be careful. You're going to hurt somebody." But that to me was kind of symbolic. What's happening in 2019, 2018. The pace of life was becoming completely absurd. And all of a sudden, the lights went out. Bang! Everything went out here in Montreal. It was in March. Everything went out before a very big weekend that I had planned, where we had planned with our teams activities of reconciliation and so on. Boom! The very next day before we got to the weekend, everything was canceled. I found myself suddenly saying, "Oh, I've got nothing to do now." And I bumped into any number of people who said, "Gosh, we've got nothing to do. The government has cut us, has closed us down. Everybody has to stay home." Well, what an experience. Crises reveals, it was like a kind of a huge pruning. The crisis reveals what's in my heart. And we're starting to see signs of new growth in the pruning, The senior citizens who we were basically putting aside into seniors' homes suddenly started to become victims of not of undercare. We started seeing ordinary workers recognized as heroes. We saw parents doing amazing things to try to bring pieces together to take care of their kids with the daycares all closed, and managing to switch their work to online work. Remarkable. And of course, there's been all kinds of negative rot as well. People who have become very violent in their homes, who become very aggressive. And of course, here in Montreal, the suicide rate and so on has increased immensely. Crises, a wake-up call, a pruning. But the crisis is not just collective. It's not just a community crisis. It's also symbolic of our personal crises, our personal COVIDs. Because in our own personal lives, we have moments of crises. All of us do. It's not a question of will I have one. It's a question of when will I have one. Some of them are bigger. Some of them are smaller. It can be a divorce, I get married with the intention of building a home and staying committed for life, and boom, everything smashes in my hands. Or the death of a close friend, or failure at an exam, and suddenly my dreams of what I wanted to do and hope for shatter before my very eyes. I remember a number of times in my own life. I give you two examples. One was when I was just 10 years old, and it was Halloween evening, and my little brother had been in bed for weeks with his asthma, very, very sick, had not been out of the house, had not been out of his room. And it was Halloween evening, and he just desperately wanted to go out and have some trick-or-treating time and get some candies. He just wanted to. And the last minute, my parents said, okay, Jimmy, you can go. And Francis, you take care of him. That was me. So he went out and he collected, and he could hardly breathe, but he was just so thrilled to do his Halloween and collect up his candies. But he was kind of slow moving because of his illness, and so I became impatient, and I started walking ahead, said, "Come on, hurry up, slowpoke." And I walked ahead of him, and all of a sudden I heard a yell from behind me. And I turned around to see some big boys had just beaten him up and taken his bag of candies, and he had nothing left. And I came back to my little brother, and I can say that took place, imagine that, it took place about 55 years ago, and I remember like it was yesterday. And that day I made a decision. I will never, ever do that again. And it changed my life. It was a crisis. I think of a second one, that in my mid-50s, a close friend of mine with whom I would often go to restaurants and chit-chat and talk about things, started developing symptoms of memory loss. And within a very short time, this friend of mine could no longer remember my name anymore. And right before me just melted the presence of a friend that I counted on for conversation. And so, what a crisis. And I made a decision that I will cherish and value the relationships that I have, because I just don't know how long they will last, because they're not eternal. Crisis can take many forms. I think way back as a young priest of a young couple from Sudbury who were living here in Montreal, and they were good friends of mine, and they went through a crisis. I didn't realize that he had an alcohol problem, but he did. And one day she decided, when he came into the house and fell asleep on the floor, dead drunk, she left a little note for him and said, I have left with the children. I think they had 3 children at the time. Now they have, I think, 8. 3 children. Says, we've left the home now. I'm not going to see you for 1 month. If you haven't straightened out your life, you won't see us ever again. And I always remember the conversation of that father when I saw him some time later. He says, it was a shock in my life. I couldn't even imagine without having my family and my children. He said, I made a decision. I was going to change the way I'm going to live. And he did. They've been living in the United States for a good number of years, but 10 years later after that event, they came to see me, and I always remember, I said, how was that? And they're happily married, they've got a large family, and he said to me, looked at me, he said, from that day on, I never touched alcohol ever again. Remarkable. Crises, COVID crisis, 2020. How many of us have maybe seen life differently, have changed the way that we look and deal with people, deal with nature, deal with our values? It's a bit of a spiritual crisis. It has been a tremendous spiritual crisis, 2020, more than anything. And a crisis and stoppage reveals what's really in my heart. One thing I know for sure at a crisis, we will never be the same again. We will either be better persons, make some steps in the right direction, or we will become more negative, violent, aggressive, who knows what it is. I've seen that as well. But we'll never remain the same. Because the COVID crisis allows a space for me to grow and to change. In conclusion, I'd like to propose maybe 3 little suggestions for this year 2021 that's approaching. 3 little suggestions. Be kinder. Be kinder with the people around you. Love the Lord more and more and give him your heart. So many people have lost touch with their Creator. Don't even think he exists. Don't bother praying. Don't bother taking time in silence and meditation. Love the Lord more. Give him your whole heart. And thirdly, work hard for the common good. Give your life for the common good of the people around you. And so how do I do that, Be kinder, love the Lord more, and work for the common good. In my many years of experience, 64 years old I am now, I've learned something. Today, I'll make one little step in the right direction. That's all I can do. One little step. But that's a step in the right direction. So I wish you all a very blessed and lovely 2021. 2020 looks like a terrible year, but in maybe some ways it was a crisis that may have shaken the foundations, both of our personal lives and our society. And I hope that we will never be the same and that we will choose a better path. So, Happy New Year to you all and to your families, and may the Lord bless you abundantly in 2021. And together, let's dream for a better future.